not everybody can beat New Zealand, and that's a compliment to New Zealand. You're still the benchmark as far as I'm concerned.
We all just assumed it would be at Twickenham, but Croke Park has also been mentioned. Have you heard anything about that?
The good teams are getting better, but the teams that were far behind before are catching up with them.
DSPN, the Devlin Sports Podcast Network.
DSPN, Martin Devlin here. You can enjoy this podcast on Rover, Spotify Video, Apple Podcasts, DSPN YouTube channel. It's a very warm welcome back to the program to a great old friend, Michael Corcoran. Michael's been calling rugby for decades for RTE. He's just kicked back again into it this season, as a matter of fact, and first came up on the weekend. What an absolute joy of a match to watch and call that was. Munster beating Ireland, well, aka Leinster, to open the URC. We've got the All Blacks against Ireland in a rematch of the Chicago 2016 historic encounter coming up in a week or so. So we thought, high time to catch up and let's build up to that. But also, Michael, welcome and kick it off with that game on the weekend. I mean, Munster, as soon as you say Munster, to all us old fogies here in New Zealand, I mean, that just brings back so many memories from 78. We're on a Grand Slam tour again. And also Clayton McMillan there. So that's a great victory for him to get his career up that end of the world, up and sparking.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, Martin. It's good to talk to you again. Yes, look, you know, it brings back memories of 1978 also. And it was a tremendous but unexpected victory for Munster, to be perfectly fair about it, with a sprinkle of Kiwi magic, as you say, with Clayton McMillan thrown in also. Yes, it was the URC. But it was in a Munster team up against a Leinster side that had 12 Irish internationals in the starting team, plus RG Snyman from South Africa. To give you an idea of the strength and depth of what Leinster had to offer over the course of the weekend, the morning of the game, Leinster had to make 3 changes, 2 to the starting team, 1 to the bench, 3 internationals, including British and Irish line number 8, Jack Conan, to drop out. And they were replaced by 3 further Irish internationals. That'll tell you how strong this Leinster current squad are, basically, to be fair about it. Munster, with just 2 players, Tyke Byrne, who's the captain, loose forward, second row loose forward, and Jack Crowley, number 10. Just 2 players involved in the squad for Chicago. And Munster upset the odds in front of a crowd of just over 51,000 people at Croke Park. So it was a big upset. Munster had won only 7 of their previous 30 games against Leinster, and everybody expected that they were going to sort of be beaten. It was going to be a familiar pattern. They'd be competitive for maybe 60 minutes, and then Leinster would pull away in the last 20. But I'm afraid Munster, not for the first time in their lives, upset the apple tart and came out winners and deserved winners, to be perfectly fair. Maybe the full-time score probably actually flatters Leinster a little bit. Because they scored in the 7th minute of the game, and they got their second score into stoppage time at the very end of the game, when Munster were down to 14 players. And at that stage, Munster were ahead by 31 points to 7. So the late score dragged it up to 31-14. It might look respectable, but from a Leinster point of view, it certainly wasn't. From a Munster point of view, it made for a pleasant evening, to be fair.
Leinster, of course, where Rieko Ioane's going to end up there next year instead of playing Super Rugby,
yeah.
Of course, where Geordie Barrett was this year, people as well. So just in terms of how prepared the Irish players are as we look forward to Chicago, the season only started just weeks ago. So are these players up to playing international rugby yet, do you think? Or maybe another 6 or 7 weeks down the track would be better for them?
I don't think they're up to international level yet, to be perfectly fair about it. I mean, last weekend with the URC was just the round 4 of the competition, and some of the majority of the players, to be fair to those involved with Leinster, the majority of them were involved in the British and Irish Lions tour to Australia just a couple of months ago. So they're being kind of drip fed back into match sharpness for quite a few of them. Say, for example, like Jemison Gibson Park, James Ryan, Gary Ringrose, Josh van der Fleer. They're playing their first game, or starting their first game of the new season. So it's effectively early in the season for them, and it's a big ask for a lot of them. Say, for example, Caelan Doris, the Irish captain, got injured towards the tail end of last season. That was back in May, and he hasn't played since then. And he's gone to Chicago today, Irish time, and they're expected to be up to international kind of speed or class in a very, very short space of time. Honestly, I don't see it happening, given the fact that, I've been watching the Rugby Championship over the last couple of months or so, and, given the fact that the way that your season in that part of the world where you are has played out to a pretty strong finish over the course of the last couple of weeks, I would say in terms of match sharpness, it will certainly be advantage New Zealand without a shadow of a doubt. And I'm not, me, Martin, I don't do BS at all, to be fair about it. I think it would be certainly advantage New Zealand, certainly, without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, it's been a couple of weeks since most of our guys played. A few of them have been drip-fed into the NPC. But yeah, it's been a hell of a season so far. And that was a mightily combative rugby championship, probably the best one that, most of us have ever watched. So lot to prove as we approach Chicago. And obviously, before we even start there, I just want to acknowledge, yourself and your own personal journey in broadcasting. You were there in 2016. Historic first ever time that Ireland had beaten us, and that was an overwhelming moment. Then, of course, you were here in 2022 when you won here in New Zealand for the first time and then won a series for the first time. So we go back to Chicago with a hell of a lot riding on this, both for the All Blacks and I also think Ireland. Let's look at Ireland to start with. Matches against New Zealand, a couple of weeks after that, Australia, and then South Africa. So, you're playing, the cream is the Southern Hemisphere, and no disrespect to Argentina, but Argentina came bottom this time in the Rugby Championship. And, so you're looking at that, and this is an Irish side that we all hear down here is not the side that was 2 years ago, didn't win the Six Nations this year. That 18-match continuous winning streak, which was upset by the All Blacks, and it wasn't upset in the quarterfinal in France. So where exactly is this team at the moment? And the second part to that question, Michael, is obviously looking at that fixture list. That's damn tough, man. How many of those do you realistically expect to win? Us, Australia and South Africa.
I don't expect Ireland to beat New Zealand in Chicago. And yes, it was fantastic to be there. And I appreciate what you say in terms of, Ireland and New Zealand and the history over the last number of years. I don't expect Ireland to win in Chicago at all. I would be astonished, to be perfectly honest about it, if Ireland came anywhere near New Zealand. That's the realistic thing about it. I think that the players are a good bit off. I think they're a bit, probably 3 or 4 games away from being at the level that they need to be at. Now, they're gone to Chicago today. They'll probably have an internal game between the squad this coming weekend to try and get them sharper again before they play New Zealand the following week. So I still think they're going to be short. That's the reality about it. We played Japan back in Dublin the week after. And with respect to Eddie Jones in Japan, I think Ireland should have enough in the tank in terms of using some maybe not first team players to win a match like that. And I think that the test for Ireland will come in the last 2 matches then. So South Africa obviously is going to be a huge one, and Australia. So I think that they'll give us a more accurate reflection as to where Ireland are in terms of right now, with the Six Nations Championship obviously coming up to come after Christmas. I would say, so I think they'll lose the first game. I think they will beat Japan on the second match. Then let's see what happens because after that, I think the other 2 games could be pretty mighty close. On their day, Australia are a pretty tough nut to crack, and we saw that during the course of the Rugby Championship and indeed the Lions tour as well. And you've got the Joe Schmidt factor thrown in there too. Also, South Africa have the ability to physically overrun an Ireland team, and I don't expect that Ireland are going to win that game either, to be fair. So I think realistically, I think they'll beat Japan. I think they have a pretty good chance of beating Australia. The other 2 matches, I think, are probably a tall order.
So where is the Irish team at the moment? And obviously, trying to get this sort of global calendar organised where we're all actually playing at the same time. It just seems almost physically impossible, doesn't it? But is it true that this Irish team, I don't want to use the phrase on a slide, that's been bandied about. I think that's a bit disrespectful. But where are you at compared to, say, where you were winning the Six Nations, not this year, but the previous year.
Yeah, I would say that that Ireland have struggled for consistency over the last number of years, probably since the return from New Zealand a couple of years ago now at this stage. I think that's probably as good as we've been in a long period of time. You're in a situation where, post-Rugby World Cup, obviously Johnny Sexton retired. There's a debate at this side of the world really in terms of Ireland, whether Jack Crowley was going to be the heir apparent there, whether it was Sam Prendergast. And I think and Andy Farrell was kind of matching between the two of them before, I think, settling on Sam Prendergast last year, which I think was a bit unfair on Jack Crowley, to be honest about it. So both of those players came head to head last Saturday night at Croke Park, and Jack Crowley was head and shoulders above Sam Prendergast. I think Ireland have got to revert back to the way they were when they played with Jemison Gibson Park at 9 and Jack Crowley at 10. I think that gives a lot more stability to that Irish backline, and you'll see a much more improved Ireland performance than on the pitch. I mean, I've heard people throw the thing around the place that it's, and I don't mean you, but like people throwing it around the place that maybe Ireland have slipped or they're not as good as they were. But, England or France have actually improved an awful lot. France are a very good side also under Fabien Galtier, and England are eventually kind of getting their act together. France were very good and showed that they can win matches without Antoine Dupont, who was holding them together for a long period of time. So France have been good and England have been good. And just because Ireland didn't win something doesn't mean that they've gone backwards. I think to use, if I can use a phrase from Clayton Macmillan, the other two teams have raised the floor rather than Ireland raising the bar, if you understand what I mean. Yeah. So the other two teams in England and France have actually come close to joining Ireland and have come up alongside Ireland rather than Ireland falling backwards. That'll be my reading of the whole thing.
Michael, would you agree that you could throw that blanket over 5, 6, 7 teams in international rugby at the moment? I mean, obviously we wind ourselves up about where the All Blacks are at and why we aren't beating teams like we used to be able to beat them and things. And I think the truth to that is everyone's got a little better. We aren't the team that we were in 2015. We acknowledge that. We don't have those players we had then. But everyone's got a little better. And we saw that during this Rugby Championship, for example, and we saw it during the Six Nations, where obviously England had a couple of good ones. Nobody went through there with a clean sweep, and nobody went through the Rugby Championship with a clean sweep. In actual fact, everyone lost at least 2 games. And so, does that mean everyone is, it's starting to be much of a muchness here? Can we read that into it?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that nobody has the divine right to be number one all of the time, and we're in a situation now where the other teams have improved and they have to be given credit for that. So, the Rugby Championship, as you said in your earlier comments there, was probably the most competitive it's been for quite a long period of time. Yes, I agree with that. And yes, I would say that the Six Nations Championship has been competitive between the 3 teams, Ireland, England and France. Now, Wales have slipped off the mark. Scotland haven't been great, and Italy just don't have the consistency that they had maybe half a dozen years ago. So, but it's up to those 3 teams to close the gap on the other 3, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
And that will help. The more often that teams play each other at the top level, the better teams are going to get. This new rugby competition, whatever, I can't even remember the name of it, if it's been given a name at this stage, where we're all going to play each other
Nations
an awful
Cup.
lot more.
Yeah.
Nations Cup, thank you. I know there was a word for it. That's going to help. It's obviously going to drive TV, which is obviously going to drive the revenue, which obviously drives everything else. And that will be helpful too. Whether we get a global calendar or otherwise, with the greatest respect, you and I aren't going to solve this. World Rugby can't do it. You and I certainly aren't going to do it in the space of a couple of minutes in a conversation. I'd love to see it happen, because I just think it, that it's just non-stop, to be perfectly fair about it. Between the URC, between Champions Cup at this side of the world, between the British and Irish Lions Tour, then you turn around into the Women's Rugby World Cup, and then all of a sudden, while that's on, you're then starting off doing the URC for this season. So it just literally like it's like one of those kind of conveyor belts that just keeps twirling around all of the time without even getting a chance for a break, and that has to have a toll on everybody, regardless of whether you're a player, a coach, a broadcaster. I mean, you can't work 52 weeks of the year, even though we all love our jobs. But I think something has to give at some stage. But I do think that that the good teams are getting better, but the teams that were far behind before are catching up with them. And just because, I know that you tear your hair out down there in New Zealand when anytime you lose a match and you're one match or you're one loss away from a crisis, and it's kind of humorous to see that from time to time. But you're not. It just means that other people are getting good, and that's a compliment to you as well.
Yeah, so just quickly, where do you think the All Blacks are at the moment? We're always keen to find out how somebody else looks at us as opposed to us internally kind of always observing or thinking that we know how good we are.
Yeah, look, I have always said, and this isn't a stock answer, I have always said that, a team and a country like New Zealand are the yardstick of and the benchmark really for everybody, regardless whether they're the world champions or not. And I don't mean that in a kind of smart-assed way, to be fair. South Africa have won World Cups and successfully done so, and Rassie Erasmus has kind of transformed rugby by what he's done. New Zealand and the All Blacks, the brand is outstanding. Your brand people are brilliant. I just wonder, where is New Zealand rugby under the international level? I see stuff on social media, from talking to friends of mine within New Zealand. How competitive are the other competitions?
Yeah,
underneath that, are clubs struggling to kind of to put teams together for the Meads Cup or competition or even club rugby like that? Because I know certainly even here in Ireland that they are struggling for numbers in terms of getting people out to play the game. And I just wonder, is that having an effect in New Zealand?
Yeah.
Look, internationally, there's some people who are friends of Razor and other people are admirers of Razor, other people are not. You'll always be judged on your international results. Everybody wants to play you. That's a compliment. Everybody wants to beat you. That's also a compliment. Not everybody can beat New Zealand, and that's a compliment to New Zealand. And I think you should take it that way. You're still the benchmark as far as I'm concerned in terms of, you judge yourself by playing New Zealand and see how you get on against them, basically. And, I just think that Irish rugby's benefited certainly from having the South African teams in the United Rugby Championship. And they've also benefited from having matches against New Zealand on quite a regular basis now at this stage. It's almost a yearly thing at this stage. And we're better people, and we're a better country, and we're better rugby players. And we're a bit like you. You've got two islands. We've only got one. We're a bit insular as well. We kind of feel a bit isolated also, and we feel that maybe we just suffer from a bit that maybe we're not as good as we think we are. And I think that's exactly how Kiwis operate as well too from time to time.
Very perceptive about the South African teams in the URC. It's really costing us here as far as Super Rugby goes. I've got a couple of questions and let you go. Always thank you so much for your time. Just an injury update. We heard Mac Hanson's out of Chicago. Bundy Aki, Robbie Henshaw, both in doubt, but Aki played, I think it was on the weekend, or came off the bench. And so any other injury update for us?
There's a couple. Jack Conan was withdrawn from the game at the weekend with some bit of a back niggle, but they reckon he's going to be all right. There is some suggestion that Caelan Doris, who hasn't played since May, could actually come back into the squad for the game. But like today's a travel day, so I think it's only an 8-hour flight or whatever. So they'll be in Chicago local time later on today. We'll do some light training. My understanding is that they'll have an internal game on Saturday, and I think we'll see how everybody is after that. But I wouldn't think that there'll be there are not too many injuries that I'm aware of anyway at this stage. We'll get updates as the thing goes on, but they'll have the training game on Saturday, and then next week will be just a normal kind of match week ahead of the game. There'll be huge excitement in Chicago for sure.
Croke Park, you mentioned Croke Park where Munster and Leinster played. We're hearing whispers that it may be the venue for the fourth test between the All Blacks and the Springboks next year after the rivalry tour, 3 in South Africa, 1. We all just assumed it would be at Twickenham, but Croke Park has also been mentioned. Have you heard anything about that? It'd be a hell of an honour.
I haven't. I think it would be. I haven't. I've only seen some of the rumours coming out from your neck of the woods there. I mean, it holds 82,500 people. They've had some big days in terms of international rugby. I mean, Leinster have played 5 games there, and incidentally, that loss to Munster was their first loss there in the 5 matches they played. They've played some NFL games there, and I know the NFL people were delighted with it as a venue. It's a superb stadium. I don't know if you've been there or otherwise, but it holds 82,500 people. If you want to get any impression of it, ask Jordy Barrett what he thinks of Croke Park, and he will give you a glowing report on that. You don't need me to say it. Ask Jordy Barrett, and he'll tell you he played there often enough with Leinster last year. I mean, if that game was to take place in Dublin, I can guarantee you it would sell out in record time.
And finally, let's just go back to 2016, because you as a fan, as a man, as a broadcaster and everything else, and you'd got so close. 2013, you were within an absolute whisker if the kick wasn't retaken by Aaron Cruden. Plenty of other times, Dan Carter drop kicking a goal, I think it was in Christchurch. And that's right. And you've gone through all of that heartache and heartbreak. You end up in Chicago in 2016, and Joe Schmidt finally does it. Just those kind of memories live with you forever, Michael, I'm sure. Plus also the specialness of the occasion of being there. I think they won the World Series baseball at the time for the first time in 100 and something years.
That's right, Joe.
Yeah, so just quickly, what are your biggest takeaways now that you think about it? I mean, it is a long time ago. It's 9 years ago, mate.
It is, but Martin, I may be a bit grayer, but my memory still works, to be perfectly fair about it, quite well. Yes, they had a parade because they'd won the World Series the day before. That was a big thing. The river in Chicago was dyed green for the occasion. The match was sensational. One of the highlights for me was a non-playing event, and that was when the Ireland team formed the figure 8 to honour the late Anthony Foley, the former Munster head coach. And the Munster players were out in front for that, led by Conor Murray. And that was a very, very special moment where they honoured a fantastic man who was outstanding from an Ireland point of view. And that really resonated with an awful lot of people, to be fair. And the New Zealand players were very, very respectful, as they always are. And as the Murray team were when they came to Thomond Park to honour Munster and Anthony Foley, I think it was the following year or in a few years after that anyway. But in terms of the match, look, it was one of those things where over the years you kind of dreamed as even as a young man, from my point of view and as a broadcaster, that maybe today was going to be the day that Ireland were going to beat New Zealand, and then New Zealand always got up and Ireland lost. And I remember being down in you referenced the Dan Carter drop goal there. I remember being in Hamilton the following week, and a lot of people in the talk on the radio and newspaper and TV in the week running up to that game. A lot of people were talking about, oh gee, something. This Ireland are good. I wouldn't mind maybe if we did lose to them, because they're actually a good up and coming team. And then we went to Hamilton the follling week, and Ireland were beaten by, I think it was 60 points to nil.
Yeah.
And that was a chastening experience, to be fair. So I've been and I've seen I've seen that side of it as well too. So to be in Chicago in a neutral ground, in a ground called Soldier Field, which honours the fallen soldiers from the United States, was a really special place to be. And for Ireland, for that to be the first time that Ireland beat New Zealand, was a memory that will live with me forever. And I can say that. I mean, I've had some disappointments from a broadcasting point of view with matches against New Zealand teams, but there have also been some highs, and they're memories that will stay with me forever and ever, long after I hang up my microphone, whenever that's going to be. So Ireland New Zealand is always a special thing in my heart. Chicago, because it was the first time, is extra special. So it's a memory that will last forever.
Thank you so much, man. I always appreciate talking with you. It is great to see you again, and we'll catch up soon.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Good to talk to you, mate.
DSPN.